I came out as trans when I was 23 and I always thought I was way too late to the game. I know there are people coming out at the age of 75, but I still felt like I had been missing out on something because I didn't come out earlier. And it's funny because I remember being 19 or 20 and seriously contemplating being trans for the first time in my life. Back then I was also thinking, I'm already an adult, it's too late to come out and start over now. I was scared and I freaked out and I pushed the idea of transitioning away. Part of me is really sad that I missed out on the opportunity to grow up as a guy, but part of me also knows that probably I wasn't ready back then. I think deep down I always knew I was a guy. I was just terrified to come out and be myself. But I'm glad I came out when I did. The first step is always the hardest. Hi, what's up? It's Luka and welcome to this video. Today I want to talk about why it took me so long to figure out I was trans and to come out as trans as well. I think a lot of trans guys can relate when I say that being trans was always like a thing that was in the back of my mind. Like I never felt comfortable being a girl or being perceived as a girl. But then again, society pushes all these gender roles on you and it takes a lot of time to accept the fact that you're trans for yourself. And then again, it takes a long time to come out as well. Or at least for me, it was a very long process. I know there are people who see like one documentary about a trans guy and then immediately they're like, yep, that's me, I'm also trans, let's go, let's transition. That was not me for sure. I watched like a million documentaries and videos and like blog posts and whatnot. But even after that, I was like, I can relate to a lot of these things, but also like, maybe I can still live like a girl, I don't know. So that was a very fun journey of self-discovery and I want to talk to you about it today because I thought it'd be interesting to list all of the reasons why it took me ages to figure out I was trans. Maybe let's start when I was a teeny tiny child. I didn't know trans people existed. I didn't know transitioning was a possibility even. There was basically zero representation or information on LGBT people, but especially trans people. I know there are people who come out as trans when they're kids and that's perfectly fine, but like I didn't know anything back then. And I think I was mostly fine because my parents and just the people around me in general, they didn't really push any like gender roles on me. I was always very much free to express myself just the way I wanted to. Nobody was ever like, oh, you can't play with this game because you're a girl, or like girls should wear this and boys should do that. Like, no, that was never really an issue for me. Obviously I was aware of these stereotypes at some point, but I always felt very free to just do whatever. And I felt like while I was a kid, people also accepted that. Like they didn't really care. They were just like, oh yeah, just a child, do whatever you want. And I think it was only when I started getting older, like going into puberty, that people really had these like gendered expectations of me. And that's when I started feeling more of this pressure to behave in like more feminine way or to like be a girl. So yeah, that was not fun and I definitely realized that something was wrong, but I couldn't really categorize it because still there was no information on being trans. And I still didn't really see being trans and transitioning as a possibility. I mean, I'm sure I must have like realized that trans people existed at some point, but I didn't know anyone who was trans. There were no trans people on TV and the media in general. So I guess I didn't make the connection that like being trans was a thing that could be possible. And I was just scared to express myself in general when I was a teenager and I was in high school and there was like all this peer pressure and I just hated it. I think I was very miserable back then, but I didn't really notice how miserable I was because I was just always distracting myself and I focused on school and sports and music and all these things, so I just ignored the whole gender part. I remember like one time, I think I was at football practice and there were like these two girls talking about like LGBT people and one of them was saying like, oh yeah, I totally understand it when like people are like gay and like they have like a same-sex partner. She was like, oh, I totally accept that, it's fine, it's cool, but you know one thing I don't understand is when like a girl wants to be a boy or the other way around. Like, why? I don't get it. That's so weird. And I don't remember what the other girl was saying, but I just remember like eavesdropping on that conversation and being like, why? Just like if someone feels that way, let them do whatever they want. Like you don't have to understand it to accept it. I was like, well, I clearly don't want to be a boy, but like, you know, if someone technically wants to be a boy, just let them do that. Oh yeah, I was very much in denial. That was tough. Just the fact that I remember this really random conversation and that was over 10 years ago. So basically throughout my whole childhood and my teenage years, I was just being a tomboy, kind of like made peace with the fact that that's the next best thing, I guess. I mean, obviously being a guy wasn't a possibility, so I could, you know, at least like dress like a guy and look like a guy. So when I finished school, I mean high school, that gave me a lot of freedom, I think, and like more like room to be myself and express myself. And then I came out. Not as trans, but as bisexual, and that was fun for a while. I was really happy that that was something new, and I also felt like at the university the people there were more diverse than at high school, and that was really great. And that's also when I started learning more and more about trans people and like transitioning and all that kind of fun stuff. So I was like 19 maybe, and I was watching a lot of trans YouTubers just for research purposes, obviously, and I started really identifying with their feelings and their backgrounds, and I was like, oh my god, this is me, but also, oh my god, this is me, And I was just binge watching all these trans videos, and I was contemplating the idea that maybe I was trans as well. I mean, probably I was, but then again, I was very, very, very terrified. There were so many excuses that I told myself, like reasons why I possibly can't be trans. And the first thing was like, oh shit, why didn't I realize this sooner? Like all these other trans people online, they seem to have known forever that they were trans. And a lot of them already came out when they were teenagers, and that was just not my experience. So I was like, yeah, I didn't know when I was a teenager I can't be trans, definitely no. And the other thing that I couldn't really identify with was that a lot of the, like, I'm trying to be very careful with my words here. I mean, being trans sucks. So a lot of trans people are really sad and depressed for good reason, obviously, especially before they transition and when they don't have any support from the community around them. And I did experience a lot of like body dysphoria and social dysphoria as well, but it was never that bad that like I couldn't leave the house anymore, or I didn't want to live my life anymore. I know it's a really stupid thinking pattern, but basically I thought I was like miserable, but I wasn't miserable enough. Like I wasn't like super depressed in my room all day, couldn't leave my bed, kind of sad. So I was thinking that in order to be trans I needed to be like more depressed, and obviously that was just something I told myself because I was scared to come out and I wanted to keep being in denial, so that's what I told myself. But that's like a really bad way to approach things. It's kind of like saying, oh, there are children starving in Africa, so like I can't feel bad about my life. It's like I'm not allowed to feel sad because there are other people who feel even more sad. And now I feel like it's ridiculous, but that's how I felt back then. And yeah, so then I was always contemplating the possibility of me being trans, and then I would push it away, and then I would contemplate it again and push it away, and it was kind of like this endless cycle. And I think during that time my biggest fear was to come out, and that I couldn't pull it off, being a guy, whatever that means. I think I had like so much self-doubt, and I didn't think I could go through with transitioning, or like even if I tried transitioning, like I still wouldn't end up looking like a guy, and that kind of terrified me. And obviously I'm afraid of confrontation, so like just the idea of coming out to people over and over again, just no, I couldn't deal with that. And the longer I waited, the more I was like, oh yeah, shit, now it's like too late to come out, like I should have done this way sooner, like now the train has left. I don't even know if you can say that in English, but the transitioning train had left. That's what I thought. I was maybe between 20 and 23, and I know that's still relatively young. I think that now I'm 27 now, but back then I was like, oh my god, I'm way too old. Because I felt like online there were a lot of people who were younger than me who'd already come out, and there were people around my age as well, or a bit older than me, but then those people had already come out, had been on testosterone for 5 years, have had top surgery and all of that. So yeah, I felt very behind. I know comparing yourself to other people is kind of pointless because, you know, you've had very much different lives. And just because other people transitioned before I did doesn't mean like their lives are superior or anything. Transitioning is definitely not the only achievement in life, but like when you're like in the middle of your transition, it kind of feels like that. Anyways, I know now that there are people coming out at all different kinds of ages, and that's perfectly fine because everybody's life is different. And I think once you start coming out and transitioning step by step, you realize that like it's fine. You're getting to where you want to be. And I'm really glad that I came out when I did, because I think it was at a point in my life where I was more secure with myself, and like the people around me, I trusted them a lot, and I got a lot of support from them. And yeah, I was in a good place. So it was like, it felt possible for me to do this, to transition and to, you know, start becoming myself and becoming Luka. Obviously sometimes I'm still like, I could have probably come out sooner, but still I'm really glad that I managed to come out in the end, and you know, I'm good now, so that's cool. It would have been nice to grow up as a guy and like experience all these years as a guy, but that doesn't mean that I like never experienced them at all, right? I still lived through all these years as myself. and that's okay. Yeah, so I hope that was interesting for you. I hope you learned something maybe. You should definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to hear me talk more about a lot of random things. Okay, cool. See you in the next video. Bye!